And welcome back, rugby fans. It's, of course, that time again where you get to be here with the Rugby Rant team for episode 97. Wow, gentlemen, we are coming really close to that century. 100 caps for the MLR team here. Do we get any medals? Do we get any caps? Anything like that?
I feel like MLR should be giving us caps here.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be something. Where's the recognition? TRN, come on. Let's make it happen,
and
boys.
We should do something for our regulars like Alex, you know?
Right. And that gives me the opportunity here to be able to not only introduce us, what we do here, but of course, those that are joining us as well each and every week, fans just like you at home. So without further ado, I remind you, my name is Ty Braga, host of today's activities alongside Rob, the Hammer Hammerschmidt, and Scott, the Big Guy Ferrara, taking them on here today, later in the rant, and of course here for the Around the Pitch in a moment, we have Alex Carlson. Alex, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, everybody. It's good to be back. I really appreciate it, especially with today being Memorial Day. It means a lot to me.
Well, this is now like the fourth time that you've been here. We're maybe going to have to give you a nickname now. Because you list yourself as no nickname. That's how you know you've reached the honors, right?
That's right.
Well, and you're coming to us from on location, are you not?
I am on location, and I'm in a room that gives me the heebie-jeebies. So for all those Wisconsin football fans, this is a Green Bay Packer sports room. I'm coming to you from southwestern Wisconsin. It makes me itchy in this room. Everything about the colors behind me represent the evil in the world. But
I feel itchy for you, Alex.
Go, Pack, go.
because I love my family. We are here visiting and celebrating some graduations. And it was great to watch some rugby here this weekend too. There's quite a few University of Wisconsin teams playing in NCR, so we got a chance to throw that up on TV behind us and enjoy that. So thank you.
I like it. And we have brought you in here not only to be able to talk about rugby in general, but to share just exactly as you said now, more about how people can learn about rugby and highlight some great efforts in rugby. And with that being said, it's time we jump into what we now know as Around the Pitch. And gentlemen, you know how it goes. It's time for us to be able to share what we think people should know. And that is exactly what's going on here as we started off with our rapid fire news piece with Rob Hammerschmidt.
Thank you, Ty. So first of all, let me just say this. We've been celebrating a lot of the 50 Cap Club, and I'm sure we're going to hit that later on. But I want to talk about a rather important piece that might have been missed. It's not that highlight like the 50 Cap Club. It's Chad Goff from the Utah Warriors. He's played for a couple teams, including the Colorado Raptors. He is actually retiring this season. He scored a try in his last home game in Harriman. He's a hooker, in case you don't know or not familiar with him. Been a stalwart this year at hooker. 21 appearances and 20 points for Colorado Raptors, 12 appearances, if my statistics are correct, for the Utah Warriors, scored 3 tries total. Again, the first one being this past weekend. So we like to see that against LA. He has 1 cap for the United States, and he's a local Utah guy. And I think that's something that I wanted to recognize, a guy that, grew up, played rugby in Utah, played for Utah Warriors. It's been outstanding to see him. And by the way, Lance Williams made it a point to say before the game, buddy, we're going to get you a try to see you out the right way, Chad. So congratulations, Chad Goff, on a tremendous MLR career.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
That's the way you want to be able to leave the field, right? On a high, scoring a try and your final time out there, and a great respect to the player, of course, Chad Goff. Let's hand it over to Scott Ferrara. What do you have to share?
Well, I'm going a little bit north of the border to Rugby Canada. And it was announced last week that the French Barbarians are pulling out of their match with Rugby Canada. That was slated for July 10th. That was their tune-up match. Well, their start of their international window. For Rugby Canada, we know they didn't qualify for Rugby World Cup next year, so they were still playing a full complement of international matches. The Barbarians cited contractual obligations as the reason for withdrawal. I think this is the second time in 2 years that Canada a match has fallen through for Canada, but I believe the first time it was COVID related, and I can't remember the team. But they already found a replacement. 15 ranked Spain, which is about 6 spots above Canada, I think, right now. coming in to play that match July 10th. Two teams that aren't in the Rugby World Cup right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Spain later on when it swings back around to me.
Right. I'm glad you kind of left that little teaser out there because there's a little bit of controversy surrounding Spain, which we're going to have to circle back around to with Scott in a moment. But before then, let's go ahead with Alex.
So as Rob mentioned earlier, 50 caps, more and more are hitting this news, this big milestone in the MLR. 3 of them, if my memory is correct, hit it this week. One is the captain, everybody's favorite, especially the Hammers, Cam Dolan from NOLA, got 50. There's nobody, in my opinion, and I'm not a NOLA fan, but I appreciate good rugby and I appreciate good ambassadors for the game. And NOLA usually has Old Glory's number as of late, but there's nobody greater to see hit that 50 cap mark than Cam Dolan. You also have Nathan Silva, who got it from Utah this week, and then former OGDC player Jake Turnbull from Austin got his 50th cap. So what a great week for rugby. It's showing that this experiment called MLR is working. It's showing that people are wanting to stay here and grow the game. And so hats off to Cam, Nathan, and Jake for hitting their 50th caps.
Yeah, it's phenomenal to be able to see more and more people hit those milestones because, as you say, the league is maturing year after year. Rob, I can see you were wanting to jump in.
Well, I'm going to jump in first. So real quick, congratulations to Dylan the Butcher Fawcett, my boy Butch. He had already hit the 50th MLR cap a couple weeks ago, but he hit 50 with just Rooney. Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, credit where credit's due. Not only are these guys getting 50, but 50 at one club, one team. That's the legacy there that everybody will know. Rob, apparently, this just in. Rob does not know how to use the mute button.
only 100 episodes in, and he's still running around.
I changed my setup, and I'm all thrown off my game. But I wanted to ask Alex, and this is a serious question. Obviously, as a veteran yourself, we applaud, and you had spoken earlier or written earlier on social media about some of the organizations, the veterans organizations that teams were giving their charity auction money to from the jerseys that were on this weekend. I got to ask you, what was your favorite military appreciation jersey from the weekend?
Alex is
on mute too.
With his mute.
Is this going to be a trend this show, guys?
I'm sorry. No. Oh, that's it. I see. Now I'm in that category. I apologize. So yeah, I'll stay off mute this time. And no, there's only one right answer, and that's the Old Glory DC jersey. I've got to stick with the hometown crowd. I like the fact that they switched it up last year. It was kind of a grayish white, pixelated, camouflage jersey. I like the blue and the kind of bluish gray. I really appreciate the fact that having served in the military, that the fact that it's such a priority in the sport to take that time across the league, right? It's a unified effort. So all those clubs recognizing that this weekend, to me, shows that that's a priority, and everybody appreciate those freedoms that we have for those that couldn't be here today to celebrate with us. And so I'm biased, admittedly biased, but I think Old Glory DC's jerseys were the sharpest this year, 2 years in a row. I mean,
we're going to allow you to be biased on this one.
I got to go with it.
We bring up, such an important point that, rugby naturally fosters respect. And it goes in every direction. And, being able to do something small, like, changing the kit, the jersey to be able with a powerful message is great. And I hope it's a tradition that sticks around for a very long time. And I love to be able to hear that the clubs are using that to be able to give back as well. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that, Rob and Alex. One of the other things I wanted to be able to highlight is USA Rugby, but in particular, the women's game and how it continues to evolve. World Rugby doing their part now, recently announcing that the entire team of referees that would be chosen to represent the 2021 Rugby World Cup, of course, taking place in New Zealand a year later through the impact of COVID. Every single referee will be, of course, female. And that means that they are highlighting not only the game itself, but the development of the officiating and all of those that are participating in helping to put that on. And our own Kat Roach, who of course has recently seen opportunities internationally, the Six Nations, and locally here as well. Deserved honor. She has been chosen as one of those representing as a referee at the Rugby World Cup. So it's a really great honor to be able to see somebody reaching the highest levels of the game possible and helping it to be able to take another step forward globally as women's rugby rightfully is doing so. So let's hand it over next to Rob. What else do you have to share with us?
Yeah, hopefully my mic is working now. Got that clarified.
We're good. Yep. We can hear you.
Perfect. I'm not going to turn it off for the rest of the night. So I wanted to highlight TRN. And we talk about it every once in a while, but I think on social media, it gets a pretty bad rap because some of the production quality is blamed on TRN, and it's not necessarily always their fault. In fact, rarely is it their fault. It's mostly on the production end of the respective teams. Nevertheless, I want to throw a shout out and kudos to them. Their expansive coverage of rugby over the course of the last year has been awesome. And I'm talking about things like Japanese League One. We've mentioned that before. We, of course, had this weekend the CRC Sevens, saw the Lindenwood women's repeat in a victory over Life 19-7, saw Kutztown, a new national championship for the CRCs, defeated Dartmouth 17-12. And then we have the 2022 high school state championships from a couple of states. One of the big ones that's coming up here is Ohio. And then, of course, I want to highlight for those north of the border, Coast to Coast Cup in Canada. That's coming up. So for people that want to watch some up-and-comers, check out the Coast to Coast Cup. You have Canada West Selects versus the Arrows Senior Academy, and then the Atlantic Selects the following week against the Canadian West Selects. So pay attention to that. It's going to be good stuff, and you might see some emerging players for Canada come out of some of those teams.
Yeah, I love that. You know, how they're embracing all different levels of the game, you know, and we'll soon see the high school rugby even being broadcast, you know, college continuing to be able to expand. And talking about college rugby, I want to send a shout out to what Dan Power recently called on the CBS broadcast as the United States of Iowa Rugby. That's right, with 3 schools being represented, UNI, University of Iowa, and Iowa State University. Paul Emmerich, of course, with UNI, who is a friend of the show and continues to be coaching in Colorado with the American Raptors. Happy to be able to see his former side of UNI doing well. And, you know, in both sides, men's and women's continuing to grow. So that is great to be able to see because, you know, TRN is giving an opportunity for these players to be noticed. And what we have always had before, and Rob, I know you mentioned this before, and it's worth helping other people understand why it's important. The more rugby we get to be able to view, the more likely we are to spot talent. So it's great to be able to see it showing on TRN. Great highlight. Wonderful shout out there, and continuing to be able to send shout outs to TRN. You can see us every single week on TRN here in our happy home on the Rugby Rant podcast show. Thank you for watching, and thank you, TRN. Let's hand it over to Scott Ferrara one more time.
So I kind of teased Spain news. Besides going into the match against Canada on July 10th in Ottawa, Spain have officially appealed the decision that for them being disqualified for the 2023 World Cup, you know, they were found to have an ineligible player. Their submission kind of points out there's discrepancies between enforcement and some of the punishment that gets doled out. And just eligibility laws in general are kind of crazy. I mean, and they cited Ireland and Scotland and a few other UK teams who have guys who might or might not be eligible. I mean, we don't know the inner workings of what somebody's eligible is, but they also, one of the things that a lot of fans were bringing up was, Tonga released their squad for the Pacific Nations Cup, and like Israel Folau's on it and Augustine Pulu's on it. But what I think fans have to realize is they changed the eligibility, for players who come from the Pacific Islands, and they can go back and play for those teams, and then they have to wait out 5 years before they can go and play.
Right, because it's about the heritage, the origin.
Exactly. So I think it's a little different than maybe calling out. That was fans calling out, not necessarily
right.
Spain. But in Spain using Ireland and Scotland, obviously they had specific.
Is that Spain just pointing fingers somewhere else? But what about them?
I mean, it's to me, it's one of those things. Hey, you got caught. It was when they looked through it, he was not eligible yet. You used him, I think, in 3 or 4 matches or 2 or 3 matches, and you got caught, unfortunately. So, I think it's a little bit of both.
You're right. And, it's interesting to be able to see, but while Spain fall out, it does offer an opportunity for another country to be able to take that opportunity to make it to the Rugby World Cup. So let's dive into the next one with Alex Carlson. You're up.
Yeah, so yesterday, tough for a lot of fans, at least in my neck of the woods, being in Virginia in the DC area. But what a shootout between Rooney and Old Glory DC. New record's been broken. I think that's back-to-back weekends, if my memory's correct. But Rooney beats Old Glory DC 59-49. And I was telling the big guy a little bit earlier, I was like, I mean, you didn't know when it was going to end. I mean, I just thought it was just like, it was going to be like 60 and 70 and 80-60 in a rugby match.
Like a Stevens match if it was actually 40 minutes.
Right. And like it just kept going. And it's the end of the season. So, all these fans are coming out there and people are texting me because I'm obviously out of town and they're like, this is insane right now. And for the people that got to go experience that for their first match, they're like, they were exhausted by the end of it, and Old Glory's been working on some chants and getting some new fans out there. So yeah, 59-49, 108 points. Scott had mentioned earlier when we were discussing Old Glory scored 92 points. The Sally has just kind of come up short the past 2 weeks. And that's the current highest scoring game in MLR. We'll have to see what next week holds in store, but holy cow. Like what a
you
battle.
Got your money's worth as a fan at the stadium,
That's
although
right.
It wasn't in the favor of OGDC. I think it's without a doubt one of the more exciting matches when you just think about the gameplay and how much action there really was.
Now that they've got all that back line kind of set, those boys are coming out firing. William Telataina had a phenomenal match yesterday, and they're kind of all sinking. So hopefully Coach Osborne will get those boys kind of squared away. Those that'll go play some extra rugby in the off season. Never really an off season. You're either in season, right, or you're in like preseason, right? So those guys, I think that back line, if they can stay together, they're going to be really, really dangerous.
Awesome. I'm glad you gave a shout out and credit to Nate Osborne coming in the middle of a season to be able to pick up where Douglas left off is tough. And, he's made some quick changes and the team is starting to find some rhythm.
Right.
So let me dive into the last, but certainly not least piece here, staying on the theme of USA women's rugby. And we like to be able to highlight big moments that allow rugby to be able to take a step forward. Another one has been achieved, I believe, recently with the USA Rugby Pathways, now identifying an all-star squad for the under 23 category, the under 23 age group. It is, as we all know, one of the most critical in development of rugby. Those are the players that will continue to be able to meet higher levels and help the USA take a step forward. Now, the reason I bring that up is that they're going to be pairing up with the WPL, the Women's Premier League, for the 2022 National Championships. They will be conducting their own competition with the U23's development side. It'll take place in 2 regional contests, finishing in a final on June 25th and 26th, alongside the WPL National Championships, which you as a fan at home can tune in to be able to watch on Flow Rugby. And of course, Flow Rugby is the home for all USA Rugby, at least for now, because we all have gripes about that. But that's another conversation and debate for another day. But thank you all for tuning in for the Around the Pitch, and we'll be back in just a few moments, not before we hear from one of our sponsors.
With over 37 years of experience, American Rugby Outfitters have been dedicated to providing quality rugby gear to those who like to get dirty. The ARO team prides itself in delivering the highest quality rugby gear that will withstand the punishment rugby dishes out. Brands such as Adidas, Barbarian, Gilbert, Canterbury, and ProTech will deliver when the game gets tough. Whether you need team uniforms, boots, bags, field equipment, or swag for the Postmaster Social, ARO is your source for quality rugby gear. they can set up your club or business with a team store like they did for us to ensure every member looks as good as the pros. If the international game is your vibe, Arrow will carry you across the line with officially licensed gear from the Eagles, Springboks, All Blacks, England, Ireland, and Wales, amongst others. Visit rugbygear.com and check out all that the folks from American Rugby Outfitters have to offer. Use the code RANT15 to get a 15% discount site-wide. As an added bonus, when the items in your cart are $100 or more, you get free shipping to anywhere in the continental United States. Don't forget to check out our line of Rugby Rant gear available exclusively at rugbygear.com. Don't forget to use RANT15 to get 15% off your order site-wide. American Rugby Outfitters, dedicated to the toughest demands in the world's toughest game.
And welcome back, rugby fans. It's time to be able to put our guests to the test in our familiar rugby debate episode. And that's where these guys get to do what we do best here on the show, and that's rant. But before then, let me tell you what we're going to be talking about here today. The hot topic as we draw ever closer to the end of the regular season of Season 5 of Major League Rugby, with only one match remaining for the predominant teams that are left. Only one team is currently at 16, and that's San Diego, because, of course, their bye week is actually the final week of, or the final round of MLR, I should say. So they're already done. But the rest, there's still a lot to play for. So between myself and the gang here, we're going to talk about who we believe are going to be those teams making it through to the postseason and eventually onto the conference final. We're going to hear from Rob, Scott, and of course, Alex, what their opinion will be on the top three. And I want to remind you, why is the three positions most important? Well, here it comes. The postseason is set up slightly different this year because there's an imbalance in the teams. So for the first time, we're now going to be able to see a playoff opportunity to make that conference final, with positions 2 and 3 on the East and the West competing for that spot to play against the number 1 seed in each conference. Right now, the way it looks by the standings, that on the East, we can see that the Free Jacks are sitting right up on top. Will they continue to stay there? Statistics would suggest yes. However, on the West, we have LA, who are hanging on quite closely and followed very hotly by the next line with AGs behind them. Will they have enough to be able to be that number 1 seed? We'll find out in this coming week. But without any further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to the rest of the team here to tell us what they think about it. And I'm going to start this round off with Alex Carlson.
Whew, no pressure. First off, I wanted to start out with, I don't think anybody's a pushover in this league. And I love the fact that, like, if you're an MLR fan, I love watching rugby. Doesn't matter if it's Super Rugby or if it's Premiership. But if you're not excited about this year for MLR, you haven't been paying attention. Like, every match matters. And it sounds cheesy and cliche, right? And we talk about it because we were so used to a lot of these American sports where you have 160 plus games in baseball and you're like, the beginning part of the season doesn't matter, right? April doesn't matter much. Well, here in the MLR, it does. And I think that it's great. Like, New England Free Jacks have upped their game, but I'm Rooney, that we talked already about Old Glory DC and Rooney this weekend. Rooney's defense concerns me a little bit with the amount of points that they let Old Glory put up on there. And so I think Atlanta's sitting in pretty good position this week to kind of hold on to that 2 spot. And Austin, the AGs have been impressing me. The more and more the years go, the more and more as the season's gone on. And I think it's going to be a Gilly challenge somewhere for this weekend, big time. And I wouldn't blink your eyes too much, because I think Austin's going to pop into that number 1 spot heading into the playoffs.
I like it. And let's quickly recap what you were saying there. So you think that Free Jacks, certainly, obviously, we now know that they're going to be the number 1 in the East and holding that spot. But you think that it's going to be Atlanta in second, and then possibly New York that'll be joining them in that conference final. Is kind of like exactly as it is in the standings. But on the other side in the West, you think that LA and AGs will certainly be the ones to beat there. SaberCats are right now in third position. So let's hear what the rest of the gang here thinks about that west and east side. Let's hand it over to Scott, the big guy Ferrara, to hear what he thinks.
Let's get hot, baby. So we're going to start off with the West Coast. I think looking at the schedules here, we have LA playing a hard Seawolves team, who beat Houston last week, and Houston's gaining those 2 bonus points by scoring the 4 tries and keeping it tight, put them into the playoffs, knocking out San Diego's chances. And then you're looking at Austin playing a Houston team, again, a Houston team who just made the playoffs, a Houston team who's looking to win the cup against the AGs in Avivia Stadium. I think you're going to be hard pressed to say, you're going to find a tough game here with AGs in Houston. I think this is going to remain the same. I think Giltini's get a 5-point bonus point win. I think Austin and Houston play a slobber knocker, but I think it's going to be high scoring. I think Austin edges them out, and they get a bonus point win. And then that just kind of sets up your regular 1, 2, 3 here in the Western Conference. Let's go to the Eastern Conference real quick. Obviously, like we talked about, Free Jacks have it locked up. It comes down to New York, who's going to be New York playing the Free Jacks. So the Free Jacks really, I'm sure their roster is going to be a little bit light. They want to give their guys 2 weeks worth of rest here. And then you have an ATL team playing a NOLA team who just got really stomped last week against the Free Jacks. So I don't know if NOLA can really play the spoiler. I think we're stuck with a 1, 2, 3. Just like I think just like at the West Coast here, that's going to be, the way it is. So you'll have Rugby New York visiting ATL in 2 weeks. You'll have Houston visiting Austin in 2 weeks. And I wonder if they're going to use that as part of the Texas Cup or whatever their cup is called. I forgot what the Shinerbach Cup or whatever. That 4th match should really decide it, to be honest. It's a playoff match, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I mean, so for you, just to be able to recap, you think that it's pretty much going to stay the way that it is right now on the standings?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much movement. Now, don't get me wrong. Maybe LA plays, plays a match where they kind of, I wouldn't say roll out a second-tier roster, but maybe they'll rest key guys. But in my opinion, I think having that extra week of rest is deserving of going out there and playing a really good match against Seattle. So I don't know. I think you have to kind of weigh the balance there. It's home in the Coliseum. So, because you have your guys home, you're not traveling, maybe you just throw all guns in there and let it ride.
All right. I like it. Let it ride. That's that. Isn't that the Free Jacks motto though?
That's like, let's ride on a woodgie, whatever a woodgie is. Notice woodgie.
Let's not get into that. That's
conveniently absent. Woodgie conveniently absent from social media. I feel like this season is interesting.
Just rub that in there.
No, that's definitely when they.
He's hiding in the woods.
Yeah. You can't find him. He's MIA.
Like the Sasquatch, they got together, they're having a bonfire and singing Kumbaya, and he couldn't be bothered by coming to the match.
And on that note, let's hand it over to Rob Hammerschmidt to hear what he thinks.
Thanks. I'm going to start in the East. Free Jacks have obviously locked up the number 1 seed. I think they're going to come out and play a pretty good roster, only because you don't want to have 2 weeks off for some of your starters. I disagree with Scott in that regard, in that I think that you want to play a good match prior to that week off that they're going to get in the playoffs. And I think that leaves ATL and Rooney to play each other in the playoff of the semifinal. ATL have 84 points on the differential advantage. And I think ATL has an advantage being at home down there in the snake pit. So Rooney really hasn't shown that they have played an awful lot of defense, at least to this last week. So I think ATL has the advantage, and I think ATL is going to advance to the semifinals against Free Jacks. On the other side, my question then, there's 2 big ones for me. Which AG's team is going to show up, right? They've had, out of the last three weeks, they've had 2 stinkers. They lost 22-8 against Utah and lost 10-8 against LA. So now they beat San Diego 44-28. So which AG team are we going to see? We've talked about defense, but it's been pretty clear that their defense, they've given up a considerable amount of points. You're talking about 40, 50, 60 points over the last 3 weeks. So that's pretty significant. Nevertheless, I think it's going to be the AGs versus Houston. Will the AGs be able to put a third match on Houston? That's always tough to do, win for a third time, but I think they're going to do it. They're going to play LA in the semifinal.
So it seems as we made our way around the table that everybody agrees that the standings as they are right now is pretty much the format that it might very well stay. It's got to be consistent, right? I mean, the competition that they're now about to play, they've already played. There's some results to be able to build on. I hope that I'm glad you brought it up, Rob, a moment ago about the AGs. What team might rock up, and at least where they stand right now, last season they just missed out on these playoff opportunities, so they're better off from where they are. They're sitting in a pretty good position. Yeah. But this isn't the full story, right? This is just one stepping stone onto that MLR championship. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to be able to see what team they field for the next game. Likewise for LA, for these teams that are sitting a little bit higher up. What will it mean? Will they sacrifice a couple of their key players in this next lineup in hopes of that they're going to be going on to later rounds? What do you guys think?
I want to just touch upon one thing before we move forward, and that is, remember how Houston finished this match? They lost it, but they won it on the last, second, or in the
not the points at least.
By Robbie Povey, who we had on the show. He kicked and put him within 7, and therefore scored the extra bonus point and locked out San Diego. So I think they're riding on a high, and I think they're a dangerous team, by the way, going against the AGs. AGs need to be on point on this next.
Right, and like you said, it's tough to be able to do it 3 times against the team, and this is kind of like a Texas rivalry that's really, really great. A game like this will help cement that rivalry as well. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting to be able to see. And this is exactly what fans wanted as we get closer towards the end of the regular season. It's exactly what we hoped for. I think we can all agree here that the mix-up in the East between second and third is the most interesting, as both ATL and New York sit on 52 points. So it's going to be those two that come out there. So let's go ahead and figure out the final thing that I wanted to be able to note is, who do you think is going to be in the conference final, though? We know who's going to be making it through. I want to be able to get a call from all of you, as we go once around again in the East and the West. I'll ask you first, Rob, as we ended with you. Who's going to be in that conference final?
Oh, I'm going to tip the nod to the AGs simply because LA, while experienced, have a bit of they've been a bit banged up. They've got guys coming back from injury. They've got a little bit older roster.
You're saying they just might not have the legs?
So they might not have the legs. The week off, if they get it, will play to their advantage, obviously. But the AGs are tough. And like I said, it was a close one the last time they played 10-8. So
yeah.
But I'm going to go with the AGs just for the hell of it.
Okay, so you think it's going to be LA versus AGs in that conference final, but you're giving the nod to the AGs.
And I'm going with the Free Jacks.
Free Jacks, okay, yeah. I mean, they've been riding high on the top for a long time. They've been solid. They've been consistent. I think it's a safe bet. Let's go ahead with Scott. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking at the Western Conference. I think Rob was talking about Houston, having all that energy. I think you kind of have an energy dump sometimes, and this might be a letdown game for Houston if they're not careful. So I do, but like I said before, I think it's a high scoring game. I think Austin beats Houston, and then it's a Gilchrist Cup match for 1 and 2. Right now the point differential lands at Austin 231, LA 168. I mean, Austin has an awful lot of firepower, and so does LA. I think it's high scoring. It would be home in LA. I don't know.
It's favoring LA, though.
I don't know if I'm necessarily favoring LA. They've come on at the right time. It's tough. I think if it's going to be a margin, it's going to be slight LA. I think it's LA at the death. Kicking a penalty that's going to just slice in there. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference. Rob was talking about he's unsure about Rooney. Prior to that, ATL beat Rooney 38-3 in Hoboken. Honestly, that match, it was 110 degrees, just like the OGs match the day before. And honestly, I just don't think New York was ready for that kind of weather because we didn't have it all season. So you're going from playing in practicing in 70-degree weather to then trying to play in 110-degree weather, and then have also have 3 tries taken back. One of which was the first try that Ed Fidel scored, which we saw via TRN in multiple clips, shouldn't have been called back. So that was just kind of a weird match. Prior to that, you have a New York win, 36-31. Prior to that goes back to the semifinal where ATL won at the death. I think it was like 7-12 with no time left. And prior to that, it was also tight matches against ATL. So I really don't know it's about which team shows up and play 2 complete halves, and then they go on to a Free Jacks team where New York has had more success against the Free Jacks, even though they don't show it in wins. The point differentials have been tighter than ATL. So again, it's who shows up in all 3 of those matches. Definitely right now, the way the Free Jacks are playing, they would come out on top, I would think. But you never know. Honestly, I think the Eastern Conference is way tighter, in my opinion, than the Western Conference.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the East is certainly a more entertaining variables there. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to be able to see. There's only one more round left as it is coming up to this weekend, which is pretty much by the time this airs, we'll be in that final round. And we'll be discussing it, I'm sure, who will be our picks for the final, the championship coming up later as well. But not before we hand it over to Alex for your final thoughts. Who's going to be in the West and the East to be able to take the top honors in their conference?
So, it's hard to, with all the teams that are currently top 3 in the East and the West, it's hard to argue, how they've gotten there. One of my notes earlier was with New England. I don't think that many people saw New England coming like they did this year, but I would give a shout out to their fans, because everybody I know that goes to those games and been watching that team, that's boots on the ground, close to New England Free Jacks, believed them, and they believed them from day one. So I think that it winds up being in the East, the Free Jacks and Rugby ATL. I think one of the benefits, and you were mentioning how tight the East is that Atlanta's been there before, right? They fell a little short last year, but they've been there before. They've got a great coaching staff, and like in a time of crisis where most organizations, whether it's a sports club or a business, would crumble with a big transition like that, they persevered and they've kept it going. So hats off them. So I think in the East, it's New England and it's ATL. In the West, like I said, I'm on the AG train. I think that their attack and their defense is the best overall in MLR from my point of view, which means nothing because I don't even have a nickname yet. We already talked about that, right? But the same thing with Rugby ATL. LA has been there before, so like they're just kind of sneaky, like a boa constrictor, just hanging around there, right? And you don't know if they're going to blow you out, if they're like you've all mentioned, if they're going to show up. But I think Austin, and LA move forward, and then I guess maybe. We'll see what happens. That's for another episode. But I think New England and Atlanta in the East. I think Austin and LA in the West.
All right. Do you want to go one step farther and say who you think is going to win that final in the conference from each side? We'll start with the East with New England, and of course ATL was your prediction.
I do. I think it winds up being New England, and it winds up being the AGs going into the final, and I'll keep my magic 8-ball, my magic 8-ball guess till later on, maybe the next show.
Right.
That keeps the carrot out there in case everybody votes me back on the show.
I didn't know we have a voting system, but apparently vote Alex.
Yeah, vote Alex, right?
We're going to ask the fans at home, what should his nickname be? Let's see what happens.
There you go.
Watch social media, right?
Yeah.
Talking about that again, it has been a blast. Thank you for continuing to be able to support us by watching us on our home at TRN. You can also continue to follow us online under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod, not only there, but also at our new home at patreon.com. For your support, a few bucks each month certainly helps us to keep doing what we do here on the Rugby Rant week after week, which is to be able to help rugby grow one fan at a time. And Alex, you certainly have been a firm part of that here. You are a great ambassador, not only for the sport, but of course, all the service. And in memory of those today, we're glad that we could have you here. Of course, you're so tightly connected to the Memorial Day theme, and obviously all the service for you and the people that you know. Thank you very much. Did you have any shout out that you might want to be able to send to fans who might be watching us here on TRN?
Yes, I do. And as mentioned before, this is my sincerest. I mean, to get invited, to be a military service member, I spent 26 years of my life in uniform for this country. And I got to go camping and hang out with my friends. And I really enjoyed those 26 years. And today for me, you see the shirt I wear. Those of you who have known, have met us, and I've got a chance to tell our story. I'm the main cat herder for Old Breed Rugby. And so we had a couple coaches representing down in NOLA, at NCR, at Babson, at the Citadel. There's countless men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And, as Rob mentioned earlier with the jerseys, I got very teary-eyed today listening to Taps and thinking about how much emotion was in those locker rooms. And as people gave those speeches about players and teammates and what it means, you have tons of military service throughout this league. You have players like Dakota Worth and Doc Irie down in NOLA. So, and then you have a few team managers in San Diego and once again at Old Glory DC that are military veterans. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of those who couldn't be here today, their families, their survivors. I appreciate all the veterans that are out here listening to this podcast and are trying to make rugby grow in the United States through their base programs and through some of these veterans groups. And once again, to you guys for being great ambassadors and giving me, a chance to come on here and share my love of the sport and also my love of the military community.
Love it. Very good and powerful experiences being had by everybody in rugby and celebrating it here. Thank you for joining us and wonderful words to share. Once again, rugby fans, you have been watching another great episode here with your Rugby Rant podcast team for episode 97. Again, you can catch us on patreon.com under the handle @RugbyRantPod to be able to get additional content that will also include another special rant. This time, talking about the controversy surrounding the red card awarded by Derek Somers in the Utah matchup. An interesting call after the final whistle. What do you think? Find us on patreon.com and you can tell us what you think about what we think. But again, thank you very much, Alex, for joining us. It has been a blast. You are, of course, a pleasure to be able to have. And I'm sure sooner or later, we'll find a nickname for you.
Number 5.
Sarge. It's Sarge.
Sarge. I like it. That works. We're voting for that. Once again, let's go ahead and thank all of our partners who help us do what we do. So we'll be back in just a few moments once we hear from one of them.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And here we are, rugby fans. Again, time for another run, pass, or kick interview with your team, of course, here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. But more importantly, we have to be able to introduce the man of the moment. That, of course, is from the LA Guiltinis, but a much deeper history in rugby than that. We're going to dive into it with, of course, Charlie Abel. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's going to be a blast.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
No,
we're excited because I think it's been quite some time since we've had anybody from the Guiltinis, not since Nick Boyer, who actually ended up playing for the Utes.
Yeah.
We're like, well, do we count that as a Guiltinis interview? You guys were in Hawaii then still, so.
If he counts it, you can count it.
All right, if we count it, we count it. Okay, that's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah.
So, again, you've seen what we do. We're going to make sure that everybody else knows what we do here. So to be able to run you through the run, pass, or kick interviews, it's best I hand you over to my colleague, Rob Hammerschmidt.
Thank you, Ty. And again, welcome, Charlie. It is always a pleasure to have somebody of your caliber join our show for the Run, Pass, or Kick interview. For folks at home that have never seen this type of interview style, it works like this. We're going to fire some questions at Charlie, and we're going to prompt each question with run, pass, or kick. And of course, just like any good rugby player, he's going to have to use his skills to navigate the game, as we say. So he'll tell us what he's going to do. If he wants to run with a question, it means he's going to run it straight on the front foot and go forward. And of course, we know that props, especially Charlie, likes to do a bit of that, but he also has some other options. He can pass a question and let us know if he's going to do that. And that simply means that perhaps he doesn't want to get in trouble with Coach Hoyles, and he's going to let that one go and pass on it. And we'll move forward to the next question. Or Charlie can have a lot of fun with us. And I think he's a pretty fun guy. He likes to have a good time, and he likes to put a little heat and pressure on his opposition. So I'm pretty sure that he'll maybe choose to kick a question to us. And all that means is that we're going to answer in a way that we think Charlie would answer. And he can direct his kick to either Ty or myself, or have a little fun with us, even more so by making us field the kick based upon whoever asks the question will have to answer it. So, Charlie, are you ready for the Run, Pass, or Kick challenge, my friend?
Ready. As ready as I'm going to be, I guess.
Hey, rugby fans. Once again, thank you for tuning in and watching us here on the Rugby Rant podcast show. As a friendly reminder, what we do here can certainly not be done week after week without the help of some great partners, one of which deserves a highlight here with Shop MLR, now powered by RugbyNow.com. They are certainly the leaders when it comes to everything Major League Rugby related for you as the fan. So make sure you go and check them out today at shopmlr.com. And their deliveries may ship the very same day, and you could have your kit ready for the next game day.
Ready.
Love that confidence.
Ready.
All right. Way back in October of 2021, you posted a video, and it looked like you were somewhere in Utah, if I'm not mistaken, and you were doing a bit of preseason scrum workout by yourself on a playground of all places. Yeah. The video, and what I love about it is you emphasize that a true student of the game can find a way to get work in regardless of circumstances. Clearly, you're trying to double dip there. You're watching the dog, you're watching the kids, and you're getting some scrum work in. So here's my question. Run, pass, or kick. Is your daughter, Rekura, getting work in as a second row or a proctologist?
I'm going to run with it. I hope she's getting work in. If my daughter decides that she wants to play rugby too, I'd love for her to be maybe a back rower, 7 or something. There you go. That's the money right there. If she wants to be a prop, I hope not. Her ears will get destroyed. So maybe no. If she loves rugby, I hope she does, and I hope I can teach her 1 or 2 things maybe.
Right,
so,
but I'm sure you're going to be able to teach her a few things about the game of rugby.
I hope so.
Well, maybe we'll see her in 2033 here in the United States when the World Cup,
Women's World Cup.
Oh, mate, I hope so.
You're grooming that next generation now, right? We love to be able to see that. That's where it all starts, right?
Well, definitely. It's going to be an epic World Cup.
Absolutely. And, on the note of family, we're going to stay there just for a second longer. Yep. And it gives me that opportunity to jump into the next question, perfectly lined up. Now, before I do that, I want folks at home who are watching and they go, well, what's this Charlie guy about, right? He's got the Gilpini's gear, but is that it? No, it's certainly not. So let's dive into some of your rich rugby history. So going back to your time in Australia, New South Wales, Country Eagles is where you kind of begin your journey to professional rugby. Then you go on to Gordon, Sydney. Actually, I stand corrected. We went through this before. You actually went overseas first to play rugby in France at CS Bonn. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, Bonn.
Bonn. Okay. I was close. It's like, 5 out of 10, Ty. He's being polite.
Pretty good.
I butchered it, but it is a good guess. So then you go back to Australia, as I said, with the Shoot Shield. Great credits there. Onto higher honors. Super Rugby comes calling, right? You have the New South Wales Waratahs. Later, then with the Melbourne Red Bulls. Then you come across to the US, where you find yourself at a happy home with the LA Giltinis. So here, it's clearly obvious that rugby is a part of your life, but it goes deeper than that. It's a part of your family's life, right? It's kind of just how you grew up around rugby. And you come from a rugby family, very obvious. Run, pass, or kick. Your father even served as the team manager, I believe, for the ACT Brumbies when we did our research. And you have two brothers, Robbie and Jake, are playing professionally in Australia as well. With such strong rugby roots tied up in Australia, was it hard for you to continue playing your rugby here in the United States? Can you tell us what you think there? Run, pass, or kick? I mean, was it difficult, that transition and being here in the US?
I'm going to run. I might run a lot of these. I like having a good run. But no, it definitely wasn't. Like, since the beginning of MLR, I always found an interest in it. And, like, I thought, man, if there's any place that's going to be very cool to play, it would be in the States. And obviously, when LA came about, the opportunity came, and I definitely thought, yeah, this is a bit of me. But I mean, as it's turned out, I came over last year, and now my brother this year is coaching at Utah. So, and my cousin is plays for Utah as well. So,
the whole family's moving here to the US, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well,
forget Australia. This is where it's happening.
Give it time. Maybe we'll just be American soon enough. No,
I like it. You know, we've already got your daughter planned for the 2033 Women's Rugby World Cup here. You got your brother. You got your family. I mean, you got it all sorted, man. But I got to follow up over here for you very quickly. How great was it to play against your brother Robbie's team, though? Because you mentioned this just a moment ago. Yeah. You know, how does that feel? Like, is there a little bit of rivalry? Did you have a little bit of a jab at each other?
Yeah, massive rivalry.
Good.
Obviously, we played them at the start of the year earlier, and we lost, which was devastating for me personally. As a team, it was hard to take, but for me personally,
on a whole new level, right?
yeah, that was rough. But the night before our game, I went and had dinner with my brother and dinner with my cousin, and there was a lot of back and forth banter going before the game, and then a lot after the game, during the game. So, yeah, it was definitely, we're definitely very competitive in my family, especially when it comes to rugby.
And if I'm not mistaken, your mom was at the game, and you scored a try, so that was extra icing on the cake, so to speak, right?
Yeah, my mom did come over. I will make this comment though. My mom, I've been here for like a year and a half now, and my mom only decided to come over when my other brother moved over. So it's a bit,
what's up, Mom?
It's a bit hurtful. She tries to tell me she doesn't have favorites, but I think she does.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we tag her with this video so she can be reminded of the fact.
It's definitely a favorite, something going on.
That's funny. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we got the win, so that's all that matters now.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And you're certainly adding to your CV, of course, with and we'll get into it a little bit later with the MLR Shield now. And now that LA has actually qualified and locked in their playoff spot, here's another opportunity to add to your accolades of your career. But I want to get into that career a little bit. You've had the opportunity to learn from guys that have played the position at a high level. I did a bit of research and found out, just a few of those individuals. Two mentors of significance we, of course, know of former England and Lions prop Alex Corbisiero, who is well known in rugby circles here in the United States, and former Wallaby Cam Blades. Two guys that played the prop position at high level. So run, pass, or kick. How have these two legends impacted your understanding of the position? Give potential props out there a little bit of knowledge and insight.
Yeah, I have to run with it because Corbs would shoot me if I didn't. But
and by the way, Charlie, neither Ty and I could field this question at all. So we're glad you're running with this one.
Bladesy was good at Gore. I actually worked with both Bladesy. So the brothers. I worked with both of them, and they were very good. Just obviously they both played both sides, and they had good knowledge and experience, and a lot of work on mentality and stuff with them. But then with Corbs, man, he's obsessed with scrums. I would say he'll go like rugby games and just watch the scrums. Like he doesn't even watch the fun parts as well. It's all fun. Scrums are fun parts. Sorry, Corbs. They are the fun parts. Yeah. But he's obsessed with rugby, and that's sort of the way he approaches rugby, the excitement he has about scrummaging and learning and watching how different teams scrummage. That's something that I've definitely tried to grab onto and learn a bit more, especially from him and from, trying to watch rugby even more in depth about. And man, honestly, he's got a wealth of knowledge, Corbs. There's not really anyone with a better CV going around than him. And so that's, if you got a bloke like that around, you have to try and soak it up as much as you can.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the strength of the MLR right now, is being able to have the ability to attract people like that, because yes, it's a young league, but you can see everybody who's coming is incredibly optimistic of where rugby is going in America. And we need that type of experience. We need that type of guidance. And guys like that are great additions to any side in the US, but in particular, the Giltinis, right? And you touched on a couple of points about being able to watch some rugby and observe that stuff there. We're going to dive into that with the next question lined up here. So run, pass, or kick. You have begun to organize front row specific camps in the LA area, right? So you're doing your part now to be able to give a little bit more guidance to the next generation, which is kind of why we're diving into this. So with that lining up this next question, when coaching an aspiring prop like yourself, what are the 3 most critical things to get right, in your opinion?
I'm going to have to run again. And the 3 things to get right. Okay, for me, when I do my clinics, there's probably a few things that I touch on, but the first thing I'd say is mentality. Scrummaging, a lot of it's just mentality. You just got to we always do that when I do a clinic or I go out and help coaching. Scrummaging is rough. You'll finish a game, no matter when you're younger or you're older, you finish a game and you're going to be sore, especially a big scrum day. And I always tell the kids when I talk about mentality, and especially here in the States, because maybe you're going to have to play games 80 minutes. But I always tell them, your coach, your backs and everyone, they actually don't really care if you're sore or you're tired. Or they actually don't. If you have a scrum on the first minute and you destroy the other opposition, they expect the same thing at the 80th minute. Games are one of great games.
Did it before, do it again.
They might tell you they love you after the game, but in the game they don't care and they want to win. And so the number one thing I talk about is try and get your mentality right in terms of scrummaging. Just push through and be mentally tough. They're always going to be hard. And then set up. Always work on your setup wherever you can. Try and get some reps in. Whether you're tight head, loose head, hooker, always just try to get reps in. When you're tired and when you don't want to do it, if you've done 10,000 setups, then it's comfortable. You'll get into your space easy. Well, as easy as you can, And then after that, just always just breathe through it. My third one, just breathe through it and focus. Communicate with your hooker, with your tight head, with your loose head, your locks. You'll
right. That's so important.
You can always manage
being
things
in tune with everybody around you, right?
Yeah, 100%. You maybe have a hooker that's really tall. You may have one that's short. You might have locks are a bit different. And it's crazy. Rugby's for people.
Locks are a bit different. So, Rob is a bit different. He's a lock. He is a little bit.
You never know if they're locks. They're all a bit different. But I think that's definitely the first 2.
It's good advice, and like you say, all of those things put to good use is really when you're everything comes together and you're constantly in pursuit. But, it's not just one thing that makes it work. It's the culmination of all these little bits and pieces, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like,
well, it's interesting, and I want to reiterate because I think for an aspiring prop, they need to remember these three pieces, right? It's a mentality, the setup, breathing, focus, and communication are all packaged together there in the third piece. And I love those because it's something that unless you're in the front row, you don't necessarily understand the importance of these. Although I got to tell you, as a guy who played a lot of second row, I always communicated to my prop in front of me, my guy, Chris Cobb, big shout out to the Cobber. He and I were always talking about where he wanted my hand placed, where he wanted my shoulder placed so that he could feel comfortable and get things right in his setup. So I love all that you said there. I'm gonna back up, and I want to talk about one question here before we zoom out of our regular package here. That's that's tied into the Rugby Network part of the show. Our partner Scott, the big guy Ferrara, was a former prop as a young guy, and he's often spoke about while subbing players the fact that a prop should be able to hook in a pinch. We've seen yellow cards or red cards after perhaps the guy that started suffered an HIA, and all of a sudden we've got a guy going off, and we have to. Guys playing out of position. So I'm really interested in this question, Charlie. Run, pass, or kick, how challenging is it for an MLR prop to play hooker, or even a tight head have to play loose head, or vice versa?
Oh, I will run, but I would like to hear you guys' opinions too. But
yeah,
it's pretty.
Do you want our opinion first before you run with it?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, definitely. You go.
We go ahead. I think he's counting on you.
By the way, so we're locked and loaded.
Yeah, you go, and then I'll give mine too because I actually have.
All right, Rob, you go first.
Well, as you said, I think the setup's important. So I think your setup and some of the mentality is going to be the same. But I think some of the dark arts is going to be a little bit different from tight head to loose head, of course, because with tight head, you're kind of pinched in between the two, whereas loose head, you can kind of do a little bit more with getting that head to the side, getting the head in the temple. As a wrestling coach, that's what I always teach guys to do in that combat situation. Put the forehead in the temple and send a message to your opposition, and that helps with the mentality, right? If you can do that consistently, scrum in and scrum out, right, you can gain a mental edge over your opposite. I think that's easier to do in the loose head position, and this is speaking from somebody who's never ever played there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a hooker, again, I think it's probably easier to transition from tight head to hooker, probably not so much from loose head to hooker, again, because of head position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I would have said though too. In the positions, I'm being transferable, from tight head to hooker. But I guess it really starts with the expectations though too. If as a team if the expectation is that you need to be able to play both, that you need to be able to have a second for every single role, on the field, in the events. If you sit down and you go through all the different scenarios as a team, and one of those scenarios is that you have to be able to be a hooker, then if the expectation is set, great, cool. But not every team's thinking about those eventualities. Not every team trains that way. So I'm interested to be able to hear not only what you think, but how has this been brought up with the Giltinis? Right. I'll throw it back at you.
Well, for me, like individually, I feel comfortable scrummaging all three.
Yeah,
I played hooker.
You played hooker though in the shoot cup, didn't you?
So in the shoot shield final, I started at tight end and finished the game at hooker.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Maher Vailanul broke his hand, and so
there was a kind of similar scenario to what we were talking about happened right there.
Yeah. So that was like, but weirdly enough, like I played. So Leslie Macon, who's in our team, right now at the Giltinis. Me and him went to high school together. We played first.
Oh, I didn't realize it goes that far back.
Yeah, and he played tight end, and I played hooker then, all the way back in high school. So I feel comfortable scrummaging across all three. Don't ask me about my throwing lineouts because that would not be the best. But I do think like if you're like, especially in the States, if you're a young kid that's a bit of a big lad that thinks maybe you want to play in the front row, I would say try get as many reps as you can. Mm-hmm. Like I think at a pinch, a tight head can cover hooker, loose head. it's probably a little bit harder for, and I think a loose head could probably cover tight head, but I do think like it probably, I do think everyone should probably get another.
So you're saying the tight end is actually most versatile front rower,
or just the tight end has to. It's similar head positioning for hooker, and then loose head
position. I gotcha.
Loose head, he would just honestly just.
So the second half of my question, sorry to jump in there. I was kind of curious if you've had these conversations at the Giltinis, like in the event this happens, has that been discussed?
Yeah, I've had those with Hoyles. So I played like against Utah. I started at tight end and moved to loose head, and then our Dallas game when we landed, Corey Thomas hurt his knee, and so our backup hooker, he can cover back row.
Okay.
So it was going to be a weird situation if someone else went injured or one was on at back row that I would have to move to hooker, and on the Dallas game. It didn't happen. We just forced Lindsay to go 80 minutes. So
like you said, because just don't care. We want the win. We saw you do it before.
Yeah. So that's like I have those. We have those options there. Like Les plays both sides for us as well. Yeah, and Andrew Tuala, he plays hooker and loose head. Joe Tafate plays hooker and tight head. So
what's kind of interesting about the Giltinis that might be more so than any other team in the league is the versatility. I mean, if we look at the LA team, like Luke White has played prop, but he's played a lot of second row here in the US, right? Yeah. Dave Dennis has moved to the back row quite a bit if he needs to. And then of course, Harrison Goddard, a guy that is playing scrum half, and he's one of my favorite scrum halves to watch. I got to be honest with you, has played quite a bit of 10 this season, right? With Luke Carty being injured and Gitz being out. So the amount of versatility that your team has shown throughout this 2022 campaign has been incredible. I got to tell you.
Honestly, there's a lot of love for some of the lads that had to move out of positions they're not particularly comfortable with. But I guess it's just if you just trust that you've done enough work throughout the week, and then stick to the basics in the game day. Probably hasn't been Hoylesy's ideal situations, but we've managed to get the wins. So that's kind of all that matters, really.
Right? I like it.
It's hard for some lad like, man, you just get chucked in the deep end and sink or swim, but like you figure it out.
The closest I've come to the front row is I was hooker and sevens, but that doesn't really count.
No, I can't count it. Sorry, mate.
Can't count it?
No, you can't come to front row at dinner. Sorry.
No, can't hang out with the front row at the bar then. Okay.
No.
All right. So, you know what? We're going to take a quick break. And again, I wanted to be able to remind our fans that we've been spending this time with Charlie from the LA Giltinis. He is, of course, a wonderful player for MLR, recent addition in more recent seasons. He's, I'm sure, going to make this a happy home. He's already bringing the rest of his family over, so he's committed to this whole U.S. rugby thing, right? His mom came before his game. That's real. It happened. Mom, look, I got rugby here. So I like it.
Growing props one generation at a time.
I like it. So, Charlie, what we're going to do is this time is we're going to take a quick break. And before we head out, remind our viewers at home that you can continue to catch the remainder of our time here with Charlie by following us on the handle at Rugby Rant Pod on our new home at patreon.com for all the additional rants and all the additional content here on this Run, Pass, or Kick interview and many more just like it. So for the time being, I want to be able to thank all our viewers on behalf of myself and, of course, Rob Hammerschmidt and Scott Ferrara, the hosts of the Rugby Rant podcast show, and more importantly, on Charlie Abel's behalf too. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you at the next.